Hey, it's Mr. Peterson, and I'm back again for another screencast. This one about cells has to do with size. This is an interesting picture of a cell. You can see in the middle it's got that blue, that's the nucleus, and then all of a sudden these like hair-like structures everywhere. Those are going crazy. That's the cytoskeleton. How small is that? How small is the nucleus? How small are cells in general? So today's screencast is about cell sizes. We measure things in the metric system, and you and I, are somewhere between 2 and 3 meters in length. You can see that some muscle cells, and nerve cells in particular, can be pretty long. Think about nerve cells that you have at the end of your fingertip that run all the way to your spinal cord. Those things could be over a meter in length, or from your toe to your spinal cord. And I think about somebody who's really tall, like Yao Ming, basketball players. Holy cow, they've got cells that are ginormous. A chicken egg, less than a meter in size. A frog egg, just a little bit bigger than a millimeter. If we take a look at plant and animal cells, most of them exist in the range of, here's a new term, micrometers. Micrometers are thousandths of a millimeter. Most of them are between 10 and 100 micrometers. The biggest cell in the human body that you could see with your naked eye is an ovum, so an unfertilized egg, and that's a big cell. How big is a micrometer? Hairs. I don't have many, but if you took the hair and you measured it, they range from anywhere from 15 to 20 to 40 micrometers across. You keep going down, bacteria, prokaryotic guys, viruses are pretty small, subcellular parts, ribosomes, those are actually an organelle inside of cells, and then proteins and lipids, we've been talking about those for a while. They're pretty small, even smaller yet. So on the scale of things, with our microscopes, these are the kinds of things that we can see. We'd be hard pressed to see a mitochondria, which is a part of a cell. Even our microscopes that we have a couple that magnify 1,000 times. We still have a hard time seeing bacteria. So those kinds of things are pretty small. How small is small? Here's a cool animation to give you an idea of size. So here's a coffee bean. You can imagine how big that is. Here's Times regular 12-point font. You go to McDonald's, and your sesame seed on your sesame seed bun and your grain of rice, you know how big those things are. And if we just keep going and getting smaller, there's a grain of salt, so on your French fries at McDonald's, a grain of salt there that's going on. If we keep getting smaller and smaller and smaller, and now we're down to unicellular organisms. So here's a guy called an amoeba proteus. It's 500 micrometers. If you saw this guy on a slide, you would be able to see him with your naked eye. Paramecium, probably not. Human egg, you still might be able to see that guy or girl. Well, it's just a cell with your naked eye if you have the right light. So they're pretty big. Keep going down, getting smaller and smaller and smaller. We zoom in. So skin cells, 30 micrometers across. Red blood cells. There's a sperm cell to kind of match up. You can see how ginormous the egg cell is compared to the sperm cell. Red blood cells. Here's a photoreceptor. We found those in our eyes, and those are pretty long cells. They're pretty slender, but long, cylindrical kinds of things. If we keep going down, Baker's yeast. We used yeast in lab the other day. And remember, those grains of yeast probably held hundreds and hundreds of these If we keep getting smaller yet, now we're starting to get the size of a bacteria, E. coli, or mitochondria or lysosome. Those are things inside of cells. You've all been vaccinated against measles and maybe even hepatitis. Oh, now we're down in proteins, hemoglobin, antibodies, ribosomes. We're even smaller. Here's a phospholipid. Remember phospholipids and glucose? We're just getting smaller until we're finally down to the size of a carbon atom, 340 picometers. That's tiny. That's smaller than you and I can see, and we can hardly even imagine one atom. So we're going to spend most of our time hanging out at this level, talking about skin cells and photoreceptors and red blood cells. Those are things that we can see with our light microscopes. So cells, pretty small if you think about it.